Let's start with that news in Tasmania, your reaction to that and your message to the industry here in Victoria.
Well, clearly it's soul destroying for the people in Tasmania involved in greyhound racing. Let's be clear, this is a decision made by a Premier who is looking to be able to form government by getting on side with Greens and Independents in that state. He announced that decision just 3 weeks after publicly supporting all three codes of racing in Tasmania, including greyhound racing. So to think that that decision, which is not made on welfare grounds, let's be really clear about that, it's really political expediency, and it's incredibly disappointing to see that occur. What I would say to everyone is we stand side by side with our peers in Tasmania, and I think our participants and our clubs need to also lend their support to the people in Tasmania, whether that's vocally supporting or getting behind anything they might need to be able to help to try and overturn that decision.
Should we be worried here in Victoria? Because there was a media report last week suggesting government would be better off financially without greyhound racing.
Well, what I can say about Victoria is our state government is unequivocal, including our racing minister Anthony Carbines, in their support for greyhound racing in Victoria, and I can also say that about the opposition and Tim Bull as the opposition racing spokesperson. They've been consistent in their support for greyhound racing in Victoria. They've demonstrated that consistently, and that includes them and MPs from all around the states attending our race club events, coming to the major race meetings, meeting with us consistently, and actually very outrightly saying that they support greyhound racing and backing it up with their actions. So I've no doubt that we've got their support. In relation to that report that was reported in the media, it is simply a single piece of work that looks at the state government's budget. It doesn't take into account the economic contribution that the greyhound racing industry makes in this state. The greyhound racing industry in Victoria contributes $850 million a year to the state's economy. That takes into account all of the contributors that go into that. That includes our clubs, our trainers, everyone involved, vets, transport companies, soil and sand companies, all of those things that go towards the economic contribution that greyhound racing makes. So just to look at the point of consumption tax part of the equation, which is a point of consumption tax on wagering, that the racing industry, including GRV, gets a percentage of that point of consumption tax. Remember, that's actually on wagering. It's not taxpayer funds. It's actually the wagering companies who pay those taxes. We do get a slice of that, but just to look at that is only a narrow part of the picture. So overall, the industry makes a net positive contribution to the economy. So without greyhound racing, the state would be financially worse off.
So you spoke to that media report. What else has GRV done in the past week to dispel some of the myths out there?
Well, look, Peter Duncan and myself have both done a bit of media in the last week and will continue to do so. And we've been very strong, I think, in terms of trying to rebut some of the myths that are peddled by our opponents. And they include things like making sure that everyone understands that no greyhound is allowed to be put down, no healthy greyhound that is able to be and suitable for rehoming. That's a fundamental that a myth that we need to dispel. And we need to be able to make sure that people have got the messages clear to be able to communicate that greyhounds are well cared for, that the people involved in greyhound racing do look after their greyhounds. And it's up to everyone in the industry to be able to communicate that effectively. We'll continue to do media in this space, and we'll provide some information for everyone in terms of the links that they can use and listen to and watch to make sure that they've got an understanding of what it is that everyone needs to talk about in greyhound racing.
GRV just completed Operation Tenacious last season. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, well, there was a particular effort by our integrity and welfare team to make it a goal to get every single property in Victoria that has registered greyhounds. So that meant throughout the year there were over 3,500 property inspections conducted by our investigations team and stewards across the state, and that was more than double what they achieved just 2 years prior. So it's been a really determined effort. That's to ensure that we can make sure that we know that all properties have been visited and that they are in the appropriate condition and the greyhounds are being properly cared for in accordance with our rules and in accordance with the Code of Practice for the Keeping of Greyhounds. During those visits, there was one serious offence, a serious breach of the rules that has been investigated and is currently before the VRT for consideration at the moment. But what we can say is the majority of people and the majority of properties were meeting their obligations, and our integrity team take an educative approach around those that might be minor breaches or aren't quite up to scratch, to try and work with the participants to make sure that they can meet the standards. So it's been a really good effort, and I'm really pleased that what they have reported is that the majority of our people, nearly all, are actually doing a really good job in terms of their properties and the care of the greyhounds.
To some more good news, we have an update on Cranbourne.
Yeah, well, just this week, the Cranbourne Club has awarded a contract to a construction company to start work on the new redevelopment and new track at Cranbourne. Work's actually already commenced, and what we expect is that within about the next 12 months, we'll be able to return to trialling on this new track at Cranbourne and to be hopefully commence racing after we've done all the testing, within the next 12 to 14 months. So that's really good news. Really well done by the club and the working party involved with pursuing this. It took a fair bit to get the finances. The club's putting a lot of their own money in, GRV's contributing, and also really important that the state government, through the Victorian Racing Industry Fund, is contributing $4 million to this project. So that's backing greyhound racing and supporting what's a really important project. And we should be able to have some news on Traralgon fairly shortly as well, which hopefully, if everything goes right, we should see some work starting there soon that will see us hopefully return to racing there early in the new year.
How has GRV been going on the financial and wagering fronts?
So we're in the process at the moment of wrapping up our financial accounts and our annual report for the last financial year, and I'm pleased to say that we were able to return to profit again this year. What that's meant is nearly a $25 million improvement or turnaround on our financial position last year. So there's been a lot of hard work, a lot of difficult decisions. Everyone's had to suffer the pain of that, but what we are now seeing is that we are returning from a turnover perspective and wagering perspective, returning to growth. Last year, total turnover on Victorian greyhound racing reached $3.02 billion. That's up just over 1% on the same time last year. And that's after we conducted around 70 fewer race meetings year on year. So what that says is we're getting better average turnover per race. We've been able to be more effective in how we schedule our race programs. It also says that wagering customers, people betting on Victorian greyhound racing, are actually coming back to greyhound racing. We're seeing bigger numbers around those. So there's some good positive signs. Been a lot of hard work done to make sure we optimise the program, get that racing program working effectively, and getting as much of our racing broadcast on Sky One as possible. All of those things have shown positive results, so we'll continue and hopefully continue to see some growth.
There have been some recent comms about unpaid fines. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, well, look, over the last few years, we've seen a growing number of participants that have unpaid fines and/or unpaid prize money that needs to be returned in the case of greyhounds being disqualified for positive swabs. Now, that growing number has been something that's been concerning, and we haven't had much traction with people actually paying their debts. So we've had a change in our rules, which is now permitted, and to make things abundantly clear, GRV can and will suspend people who don't make sufficient effort to be able to clear their debts in return in relation to fines, unpaid fines, or returning prize money. So the clear message out of all of this, and we've had many people already that have made the effort and got this cleared up, if you have an outstanding debt, You will have had communication about it. Make sure you clear it up as quickly as possible.
Do you have an update on the digital Greyhound lifecycle tracking program?
Yeah, look, there's a lot of work going on in this space, and we've really ramped up how we're doing this. A lot of people be aware that we've been scanning greyhounds at trials more frequently than we did before. That is all about just making sure we get enough touch points with greyhounds, particularly those that are in the pre-career stage. What we're progressing to now is we're working with our clubs, and our clubs are getting new scanning equipment at the moment to be able to set ourselves up for people to be able to check in their greyhounds at designated days at clubs if they haven't been officially microchip scanned within the last 6 months. So this includes pre-career greyhounds, it includes retired greyhounds, or some that might be in the breeding phase where we might not have had an official what we call a hard touch point. That is, the greyhound's either been microchipped, it's been scanned at a race meeting, at trials, or had some veterinary attention, might have been a vaccine. Those kinds of things. Officially, you will need to be able to demonstrate that the greyhound's been scanned within 6 months. So there'll be some comms coming out soon to people who have greyhounds that haven't been officially scanned within the last 6 months, and some information about how you can meet the requirements going forward.
And there was also some recent news about changes to the way GRV will prosecute prohibited substance positive swab offences.
Yeah, so people might be aware that where we have a positive swab for a prohibited substance as opposed to a permanently banned substance, those particular offences often take a very long time to get through the Victorian Racing Tribunal. We can have a backlog there that can be up to 12 months long. So that kind of backlog creates stress for participants. It also creates considerable work, time and effort. So a change in our rules has now permitted the GRV stewards to be able to hear certain prohibited substance offences, not all, but those ones where we would call them the lower level offending, that the stewards will be able to hear those and do inquiries and have hearings and consider penalties. And in many cases, these cases involve a guilty plea on the part of participants. So this is going to be designed to be able to try and get through these cases a little quicker, free up the VRT to be hearing the most serious of offences, and that'll be in play now. So we'll see that start to play out over the next little while.
And participants will still have the chance to appeal those decisions at VRT.
Oh, that's right. So the decisions of stewards in these matters will still be able to be appealed to the Victorian Racing Tribunal. So all of those rights will still remain. And then there will be some cases where the stewards will actually want to refer it to the VRT as well. So it will be a little bit of horses for courses, but all of those avenues are still open to participants, and they will be able to see natural justice in that whole process.
How are we looking in the gap and rehoming space?
Yeah, look, it's been a particularly difficult period over the last financial year in terms of rehoming. Everybody knows that. And everybody knows that it's not just greyhounds that have difficulty in finding homes. It's across all dog breeds. We know that when we talk to many of the other rehoming agencies, RSPCA, etc., that the economic climate and those sort of situations has meant that it's particularly difficult at the moment. We recognise that, and it's difficult for everybody. We have recently redeveloped and relaunched the GAP website, which creates a much better experience, and we've got a new marketing program running on GAP, which is trying to generate more leads and more people interested in adoption. That website hopefully will improve that process. But I also want to emphasise that what we have seen, our GAP team are reporting that they are receiving more greyhounds that what we would call are not ready for adoption. So what that means is they haven't been properly prepared yet for pet life in retirement. So what I want to emphasise to everyone is it's critically important that the greyhounds that are being delivered to GAP ready for adoption, that they are pet ready, that people have put the time and effort in, and that the greyhounds are ready, because when they're not, this is clogging up the system. It's taking longer to get greyhounds ready for adoption. So if we are generating more leads, we want to be able to make sure that we've got a good quantity of greyhounds available for adoption.
And on the track, we're in the midst of a Nationals campaign.
Yeah, look, the Nationals in Brisbane later this month. It's all getting very exciting now. We've got a team of 7 greyhounds representing Victoria, and they are some of the best greyhounds in the nation across the straight track championships, across the distance championships, and in the sprint finals. We wish them all well, and we expect that the Big V will bring home the trifecta.